So Laura, so you're an archaeologist studying immigration. So I'm wondering what kinds of materials you actually look at then. Because when
Yeah,
I think of an archaeologist, I'm thinking of like Jurassic Park, or I'm thinking,
oh,
or
that's
even like
paleontology.
paleontology.
that's
Okay.
that's a different field. But yes,
Or
completely
even
understand
like
what you're
people
saying.
looking at
Like,
ceramics.
yeah,
Yeah,
ceramics, just
stuff like that.
anything that comes out of the ground that's not dirt, like that's not dirt or rocks, like that's an artifact. So oftentimes, what we're finding is our broken rice bowls and broken like liquor bottles, whiskey bottles, random metal parts. So kind of like what you would probably expect to find if there was a house or a structure and then it got demolished, or if so oftentimes we're looking at trash pits. So that's literally, yeah, we're looking at out. So again, that would be like broken ceramics and fragments of things, beer bottles, maybe even like food remains. So that would be fish bones, pig, pig bone, beef, cow bones, things like that. So it's all of that we consider artifacts and things that we would clean and organize and categorize, identify. So a lot of the ceramics you can research and find out how old they are, what pattern they are, whether they came from China or if they're more of a American or British plate or something like that. So what that what those materials help us do is you can study a site as it changes over time. So that's why kind of your reference to digging dinosaurs, the oldest layers are going to be at the bottom, deeper, and then the younger layers are going to be closer to the top. So in that way you can compare different layers and say, okay, they're eating more uh, beef in this time period, and you can date the artifacts, so you can say, okay, this is 1920s like Chinatown material, and looks like they were like starving or something like that, or they were getting or they were buying from a certain place, rather than growing their own food. Because I think if you look at animal bones, you can tell like if they were butchered by like a professional, like with a saw, and versus something that they were cutting with a cleaver. So it's kind of interesting to kind of trace that. And then the ceramics, they have maker's marks, so you can, look at where they're buying their stuff from and what they're using it for. And there's all kinds of interpretations you can apply to or analyses, sorry, and then the interpretations come from your analyses. So yeah, right now I'm still looking at my artifact collection, but from my analysis of the archaeology survey that I did in China on the home village, I'm finding a lot of artifacts that are similar to what people would have used in Chinatowns in terms of the Chinese tablewares. So I think that's interesting because I actually helped excavate another home village, or investigate another home village in China that also had ties to immigration to other parts of the world. And there was one pattern that they didn't find. It's called the Four Seasons flower. And I found that in my village. So I think it kind of it shows that there's differences in what people have access to in the home village. And then it also perhaps shows like that the immigrants in the U.S. were perhaps buying their ceramics from a different source than the people in the home village. So that kind of, I think, relates to the rise of these specific gold mountain firms that were handling not only remittances and letters, but also providing goods to Chinatowns all over the world. So I think doing more analysis like of what's going on, where are they getting their stuff from in China, like that would really help clarify the networks that brought these goods over, because I'm thinking it's different than what the home village people are getting access to, although it could be the same. So maybe that changes over time. So, and also I think what's interesting too is what they brought over to China that is clearly American made. So in one instance I found a kind of like an aspirin bottle, a pill bottle that was definitely made in the US. And so it's kind of interesting that they chose to bring this, and I'm pretty sure they brought it over individually on the ship as they were returning to China, so that they could have this medicine like with them, and maybe to share it with their relatives, because Chinese people, I don't know if you know, but they're really into medicine, and there's all kinds of different ways that you can have medicine. You can apply it topically, so you can rub like oil to your skin, and that's like something my grandmother like was really into. And you can ingest pills. You could have like a liquid that you could ingest. And there were so many Chinese medicines available at the time. So it's really interesting that they would bring this thing back from the US when they had so much available. So I think it touches on healthcare, and what that Chinese people were like kind of willing to try like different things, and maybe thought they were even better than what they had in the home village. And then another interesting thing was like a spoon I found, a Western metal spoon. And it made me think of this story that I had heard from someone whose grandfather returned to the village from America, from Riverside. And he said that when he came back to China, he was really wanting coffee. And this is something that, wasn't really available in the village, but it was available in the big town, the big city nearby. And so this love for coffee was something that they acquired in the United States. And so I was thinking of this spoon as something like maybe for sugar for your coffee, or like something for your, I don't know, just something that you couldn't have while you're in China, but that you had grown accustomed to in the United States. So I think it's also, I guess with my project, I'm also trying to say that like, not only did Chinese immigrants like kind of, contribute to their local society in the US, but also when they came back to their home village, they also, there are also things that they brought back that they got used to while they were in the US. And I think it kind of shows that these communities are not static, like they're not just like frozen in time, that when we talk about China, where people came from, that they're changing too, and they're adapting as well. So I think what we, as archaeologists, we tend to think like, okay, well, in China, they would have eaten more pork than beef. They would have, only used Chinese stuff in their daily life, like to eat with. And I think that's not true, especially when you're looking at this group where a large portion of their population is transnational, that they're coming back and forth between China and the US. And so it kind of, I hope that it shows that like communities are formed by people who, like are in different places and don't necessarily have are not necessarily traditional, static, and yeah, that's what I want to show.
Cool. Another question I had was, so I know your research focus is on a particular like time frame,
Yeah.
but I was wondering if you also might know when did Chinese from other parts of China start to immigrate to the U.S., such as people from
Yeah, that's a great question.
more northern parts?
Yeah, so that is that all changed with the 1965 Immigration Act in the U.S. And interestingly, this kind of comes at the heels of like the civil rights movement, which, you know, led by Black folks. And it's kind of like, yeah, this law has such a huge impact on Asian immigration, especially immigration from China. So it allowed people to reunify with their family members. And this is really how my family came to the United States too, because we, if you already have family in the US, you can sponsor your siblings and you can sponsor your parents to come over to the US. And I had an aunt who married a Chinese American man in the United States who was already in the United States. And she was able to sponsor all 10 of her siblings. And then those siblings are able to sponsor their wives or husbands to come to the US. And then those people are able to sponsor their families. So like basically you could bring a whole village to the US if you guys are all related or married or whatever to each other. And so that's why Chinatowns continue to thrive in the 70s, 80s, 90s, because there's this new immigration that people need a place where if they don't know English, like they can get around, they can buy things at the grocery store, they can get help from like Chinese organizations that help new immigrants. And then in terms of Northern Chinese immigration though, like or immigration from Hong Kong and Taiwan, I think that really comes with just HB1 or H1B.
H1B.
H1B visas, where like if you have a skill in the high tech, you know, industry, or like something that makes you valuable to the United States, like in terms of what skills you can bring, that's where like a lot of these immigrants from Hong Kong and perhaps Northern China, Taiwan started to come. And yeah, and I think there's a pathway to citizenship for those visa holders. And then in Canada, I think you can just buy your way into like citizenship if you're really wealthy, like, and a lot of people in China are, because, you know, China's a superpower. A rise of middle class and industrialization. There's like, yeah, you can if you can throw money at like permanent residency or something, you can become a Canadian citizen. The US doesn't have that, but yeah, it's just these more lax immigration laws, which are now under like, you know, these visas they're trying to restrict. And, you know, we heard with ICE trying to tell international students that they can't be here, like these laws that are, you know, were fought for and like were beneficial economically. Now they're under attack because, you know, we have this anti-immigrant rhetoric thanks to Trump. Yeah, it's all you know, it's part of our history to exclude people, so I'm not surprised that there's a resurgence. So it's yeah, we definitely have to be vigilant and just kind of be like, no, you know, if you're you know, America supposedly stands for immigrants and welcomes immigrants, and historically, it has for white Western Europeans. But yeah, it's kind of, I think we're at a crucial moment where like, yeah, we have to decide like, do we forsake those kind of like that kind of nation of immigrants idea, or do we hold on to it and kind of fight for the rights of for people to come here and make a better life for themselves? Did I answer your question? Yes, I think I did.
Yeah.
I went on a tangent though after that.
No, it's all good. I feel like we tend to do that on this pod anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know, like in the late 19th century, how did the Chinese folks...
Oh, sorry. I have a bad connection. I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, it's all good. My connections have been kind of wonky too.
Okay.
I was just curious about the perception of the Chinese people. How do they perceive America? Because I feel like there's this idealized fantasy or notion that, you know, America is a great country. It's a lot of freedom, and you can like make it if you work hard and, you know, do all this. I mean, we all know it's bullshit, but I just want to know, like, how has that idealization of America, how has it shifted, like, from the late 19th century to the current day? Because, like, I feel like I've been hearing a lot of Chinese international students that come here.
Okay. They
have these idealized notion of America. When they get here, they're like, what the fuck? You know, there's a lot of homeless people. I'm experiencing, like, discrimination and racism and sexism. This sucks. And most of them actually end up going back to China or the original country and become more nationalistic in their countries of origin.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
But I'm just kind of curious about how has the view of America has shifted with the Chinese over these past, you know,
150 years. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think in the beginning, I think in the late 19th century, there was kind of bad information about what America was going to be like, that people, if they were going to make a profit off of you going to America, they would probably make it sound great, right? And the people who were in the U.S. and weren't doing well, they were probably embarrassed to say like that they weren't doing well. So I think the people who were coming over in the late 1800s, for the first time, they probably didn't know how bad it would be once they got here. So I don't think they were like, I don't think they were coming here to necessarily like, they didn't have this concept of American dream. Like, I think this idea of making money was basically what motivated them. And, you know, that's why Chinese immigrants call America or Canada or Australia Gold Mountain, depends on what time period and when they were going. But it is interesting that a lot of the immigration was also because people were trying to reunify with someone. I think I see that a lot in my Chinatowns, especially. You see like 14-year-old, 13-year-old sons of these immigrants coming over, and they could do so legally, because if you were the son of a merchant and you were under 21, over to join your father. I mean, there's still like no citizenship for you, but that's kind of a narrative that I'm also interested in, like kind of shedding light on, like that it wasn't all just, you know, coming over to make money as soon as possible and then going back. Although I think like even if you did bring your son over, I think there was still this idea that eventually you would retire in China, and that you were bringing your son over to like kind of show him how to run a business or whatever. But a lot of these people went to school with like, and they were like the only one of the few Chinese people in their classroom. So super interesting, that subset of people. And then there were a few women who were able to join their husbands as the wives of merchants, but that was pretty rare because Chinese women were scrutinized pretty harshly by immigration officers, and a lot of times they were rejected from coming over. So in terms of later on, I think I kind of want to talk about the Chinese American population, because your thing about nationalism kind of reminded me of there's a growing Chinese American population. So these are second generation, maybe even third generation people who born here. They grew up like, going to school maybe with white students, but they're facing a lot of discrimination in terms of jobs. Like, even if you got a degree in engineering, like no engineering firm would hire you. If you got a degree in to try to be a teacher as a woman, like nobody would hire you as a Chinese American woman teacher. So I think there's a lot of frustration with that. And when World War II happened, there was that a lot of them were eager to join in because they would be fighting for their home country, China, right? So a lot of people would say, my future is going to be in China because there's so much discrimination here against me. Like, even though I was born here, like I'm bilingual, and I'm okay with, marrying someone in China and just kind of making my future there. So there were some people that did that, and or maybe they didn't go and live in China, but they were willing to fight for during World War II. And then there was a lot of that kind of Chinese nationalism starting in Chinese American communities, a lot of fundraising efforts for various things. And then I think with people like my parents who came in the 1980s, I think, I also want to back up. In between, there's like communism in China, which is kind of why there's this kind of period of time where there's not really much of a U.S. relationship with China. And that's why between World War II and like 1965 Immigration Act, like it seems like there's nothing happening, but that's because China, Mao was in power, and it was hard to communicate with family back in China. So I think during that time period, there was some immigration, but it's kind of people who are refugees. They call themselves refugees, and they're escaping communist China because if you owned land, like you were thought of as not good, just to simplify things. That you were part of the problem, that you were a landlord and so on. So a lot of people who had connections to Chinese immigrants, they had land, and they had, they were thought of as rich people. So there was some immigration because of that. So that's just straight up like, they were considered refugees. And they would escape to Hong Kong first, I think, a lot of times. And then later on, like my parents' generation, like post 1965 immigration, that's like a lot of, I guess, that's when we kind of hear about this American dream thing. And I feel like with my parents, like they probably would agree with what you were saying, like, oh, we came here for a better opportunity to have a better life. But I think it's also residual is like trying to escape communism and like the poverty that caused, the kind of lack of a future like that they saw. But then having these connections to the U.S., right? Because there's so many people in the world who would probably say, I would love to come to America and start there. But, if you don't have the connections, you don't have a pathway, like there's not going to be a huge immigration from wherever you're living. But because obviously like my family, they come from this part of the world where there's been 100+ years of immigration, like I think it's more like we're poor and we have these connections, so we're gonna take advantage of it. So that's why. Yeah. So I think you're right. That's kind of, you have to have some relationship with the U.S. I don't think it's, whether it's through immigration laws that allow you to come, recruitment for some reason, but I think also the rise of capitalism and just like the need for cheap labor kind of thing. Because like my parents, when they came, they were restaurant worker and like, you know, seamstress. So like they were totally exploited like by their own people to do these jobs that are, you know, they don't have to pay them a lot, and they, you know, have to still live like, I mean, my parents are working class. They've never been not working class. So it's still like, and they've only been able to save like tons of money by just living super frugally. Like I never saw them go out to eat. Like I never saw them like buy anything crazy. So anyway, kind of a tangent, but yeah, good. Sorry, what was your question? Next question.
Well, we're already past an hour mark, but I don't know how much more time you got.
Oh yeah, I can do one more question and then I'll probably have to go.
Okay. Carlos, did you have any dying questions? I had one question, but it's not really like crazy.
It's fine. I didn't really have any questions.
I guess, Laura, like what are some book or film recommendations you have?
What are some what?
A book or a film recommendation, like documentary or any series. I mean, it could be pertaining to the research, or it could just be your own like interest.
Yeah, I would totally recommend the PBS documentary, Asian Americans. I'm not sure it's free anymore, but I think you can buy it as a DVD, and that tells you the history of Asian Americans from like when Filipinos formed the first Asian American communities in New Orleans, in Louisiana, when they jumped ship from Spanish galleons, all the way up to like present day, with, you know, well, not present day with COVID and anti-Asian racism, but more like, you know, 9/11 and how, you know, there's a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric, and then that spills over to like confusing Sikhs with, you know, Muslims, and just this idea that like we're always foreign, and that we can, depending on what the political and social climate is, like we're gonna be hated. So I think what's cool about that documentary is it covers like different Asian groups, not just Chinese and not just Japanese, but also like brown Asians, like Filipinos and South Asian groups, and then Southeast Asian groups as well. So covering the Vietnam War and why Southeast Asian refugees are here. So I definitely think that's a good one. And then in terms of books, I guess I could promote my book chapter and say, there's this new book out called Chinese Diaspora Archaeology in North America. It's an edited volume that Chelsea Rose and Ryan Kennedy put together, and I have a book chapter in it, and basically just kind of talking about my research, not my findings, but kind of why I want to do this research that looks at these diasporically linked communities and why that's important, and why Chinese American history should be looked at from this point of view, not just like from the U.S. point of view, but like from a more transnational perspective that includes the home village. And then there's other ones that talk about other Chinese communities, not just in California, which is like, you know, I'm contributing to this California-centric point of view, but you know, Chinese in New Orleans, Chinese in in Montana and Chinese in Idaho. So like it's yeah, Chinese people were everywhere. So if it's kind of interesting that archaeology is one of the few ways that we've been able to so archaeology is one of the ways that we can highlight like these communities that don't have a physical marker anymore. There's no buildings that all over California. Like you name a city, there was a Chinese community there or a Chinese vegetable garden. So I think archaeology just in and of itself is like a witness kind of to like what was here before, and that like America was never a country that was completely white and that they were the people who, you know, built everything, or that they were the ones that kind of the main contributors to the establishment of the U.S. So those are my 2 recommendations, and yeah, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us and just sharing your research. I learned so much today. So many things I didn't know about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
yeah. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining us. I learned a lot too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And how was this for you, Laura? I don't know if you ever done like an interview or a podcast.
It was good. Actually, no, I have not done like a full like hour and a half interview. Yeah, it was really good because I felt I covered like a lot of things I wanted to talk about in my dissertation, but like I probably would not be able to, like all this stuff about all the questions you guys brought up about more contemporary like Chinese immigration and more like just kind of why people came. And I think what all these interactions with different communities, I would definitely want to look at that more in my dissertation. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, like I haven't been able to see my family because
of COVID. Yeah, I get that.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know, like I'm just glad my family's healthy, so I don't have anything to complain about. But it is super interesting the times we're living in, and like all this like anti-Asian stuff that's being videotaped. Like just two came out yesterday, like. And I'm like, is it? I think it's because people have their cell phones, right? It's like, it's not that there's more of it. It's just,
yeah. It's just that it gets more documented easily.
And shared. And yeah, I think you're right. So it's, I feel like I just kind of have to not let that stuff get to me. And
yeah.
Especially since we're going through like the civil rights movement with Black Lives Matter, and that definitely got me down. Like, you know, seeing, I don't know if you have seen like Asian people just being super racist and like,
I've seen that.
Just like, I'm so mad that the stores are being broken into and looted, and it's like, literally like in one instance, this Asian woman said that, and like her Black friend said, can you stop caring more about like the movement and less about the stores? And she was like, no. She just straight up was like, no. It was so sad. It really got to me, and I was like, I don't know. I shouldn't be surprised, but it just kind of is demoralizing when you see that you can't even this person's crying out to you that like please care about me, and you can't. Like, it's so sad.
Yeah.
I don't know what you've seen.
Oh, no, I've seen that a lot too. And a lot of the, I don't like going to these Asian activist groups in Facebook. They just piss me off every time I go.
Oh, really?
It's just like, it's like completely like one-sided. Like, you know, there'll be like a lot of anti-Black sentiments from, you know, Asian Americans that don't know the history of.
Or what about COVID and
yeah, and then on the other there's also the other extreme of Asian activists where they don't even care about the Asian victims from the racist attacks, but they keep focusing on Black Lives Matter. And that also pisses me off too. It's like, can't you just do both?
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah, no, I would want to hear more from you about that. But
yeah, maybe next time we can do a pod on that.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
You can care about multiple communities without like throwing the other one under the bus.
Exactly. And I just feel like people are very triggered and activated.
Extremed. Yeah, they kind of go to extremes when it's hard to think critically. I think when you feel like your community is under attack, or like if you're under attack, I don't know. Just like when people get mad, they do things that aren't pretty. Okay. Like,
yeah, and the media tends to focus on the looting and highlight it.
Yeah.
And not necessarily all the Black Lives Matter people are supportive of the looting either.
Exactly. I'm like,
and there's been evidence that like white people actually have been the cause of the looting, and police officers too. So.
Yeah, no, and the police thing, that's like huge. Like, why don't they focus on that? And
yeah. But thank you so much, Laura.
Yeah,
and it was nice to see you again and hear from you.
Nice to see you too. Nice to meet you, Carlos. Maybe, yeah, we'll do this again. I don't know if you have a topic that's related, but
no, I think what you brought up was a good topic. I actually didn't realize I had so much to say about it. That's why.
No, I don't. You should bring someone else.
Or you can join a conversation. Maybe like it could just be a round table. Because other ones we've done were like, because most of us are educators here, especially the ones that are on this pod. We done like experiences of Asian male educators in the inner city. That was an interesting one. Yeah, we did that one too.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let me know, and I'm gonna get some food now.
All right. See you, Laura.
All right. Bye, guys.
Nice to meet you. Bye.